Alright, so in this video I'm going to talk about surf fishing rigs. Well, there's the store-bought rigs, and as you can see, this is your average run-of-the-mill store-bought rig. This one here is made with wire leader instead of clear monofilament, but generally they're made the same way. They've got these beads here for a fish attractor, which is kind of stupid because the bait is way over here. The beads are over here. And as you can see, the spread of it from the sinker down here to where you hook up here isn't very long. It's maybe as long as my arm. And it's got a lot of bulky terminal tackle. I mean, my God. That swivel there is probably rated for 500 pounds. And there's no need for anything that size. As you can see how short it is compared to how long my hand-tied rigs are. And mine has 1, 2, 3 hooks. And the bead is right there at the hook as a fish attractor. Mine, that's the size swivel I'm using there compared to this giant shit they're using. I mean, look, you don't want a bunch of bulky terminal tackle out there. I mean, look at this. This snap swivel, this crimp, all this compared to this right here. Now, what do you think a fish is going to go after? You know, they're going to see that wire leader, all this stuff on it, they're going to leave it alone. But anyway, I'm going to show you how to make one of these hand-tied rigs. Alright, so this right here is all you need to make the rig. Some 50-pound test leader. You got to use 50. 20's not stiff enough. 30's not stiff enough. 60 is too stiff, and it's actually the diameter is so large you generally can't thread it through these small swivels and hooks. You need a little swivel, and I know it looks tiny compared to that stuff that they have on theirs, but that swivel there is rated for like 50 pounds. That's all you need. You need beads and you need hooks, and since I already have a lot of rigs with J hooks on them, I'm going to use some circle hooks on this. These are number 4 light circle hooks, and I'll show you the difference real quick in a J hook and a circle hook. But anyway, that right there is all you need, other than your sinker. And I'll show you that in a minute. Okay, so the difference in a J hook and a circle hook, as you can see, the circle hook is designed so that if the fish swallows the bait down in his gut, a lot of times what happens is that J hook will get hung in their gut and then the fish dies. The circle hook allows the bait to pass back up, but then it will catch the fish in the corner of the mouth. Guaranteed, every time. Matter of fact, every fish I've ever caught with a circle hook has been in the corner of their mouth. So they work really well. And they actually will catch fish better than the J hooks. Instead of having to jerk to set the hook, you just lift the rod tip and it sets itself. Alright, so the first thing you do is you pass the line through a bead and then through your hook. Then you take the line, you double it back on itself, and you pass it back through your bead like that, so that you form a loop with the hook on the end of the bead like that, and then you have a tag end over here, and then your line going to your spool. Now go ahead and pull a lot of slack off of that, because you're going to do this 2 more times, because you're going to put 3 hooks on this rig, or 2 depending on how you want to do it. But you need to pull a good bit of slack off here, because this end here is where you're going to tie your sinker. Okay, so this is the basis of what you should have. This is the line coming off your spool. 1, 2, 3. And then a tag end out here. And in this end here is where you're going to put your sinker, your loop. So you go ahead and tie that, and then depending on how far apart you want to space these, you start pulling slack from your spool and feed it through and then space them out. Alright, so here below our bottom hook, we make our loop for our sinker. And it's just a single loop here because it's at the end of the line. Now if it's in the middle of the line, you have to do a double, otherwise it'll slip. But here on the end, the way the load's being applied to the line, you can go with single. Make your loop big enough that you can pass it through the eye and around a pyramid sinker or whatever kind of sinker you're going to use. Alright, so when you start spacing it off, tying it out, it's your own personal preference, but for my surf rigs, generally, there's my loop for my sinker. About 1.5 feet out from that, this is what I do. I pull it down kind of close, and then I make a single loop knot like this, and then I clench it down. So this acts as a stopper knot, stop the bead from sliding up, but still lets the bead slide some, and with the hook being on a loop, it's got a little bit of natural action. It can move around a little bit. With the bait on it, it's not so rigid. So I make that single loop like that, and then just a little ways up from that, I'll tie a double loop to make this act like a dropper. And you have to tie the double loop because you're in the middle of the rig, and pull from either direction will cause a single loop to pull out. You can do the single loop here because you're doing the double loop back here. Okay, so there's my sinker loop, about 1.5 feet, my double loop there, my single loop there, my bead, my hook. And that's probably, well, you see, it's about the distance of my hand from the main line to the hook. Not that much dropper, so 6 inches or so wide right there. And you go up to your next hook and bead and get ready to do the same thing. And depending on how far out you want to space it. Like I said, for my surf rigs, the length from my fingertips to my elbow, about 2 foot or so is good. Okay, so if you followed my instructions, this is what you should end up with. At the bottom end is your loop, large enough to pass a pyramid sinker through. 1.5 feet up from that, or depending on how you want to space it, you can space it closer for an inshore rig, more for surf fishing. 1.5 feet up, first hook, bead. A couple of feet up from there, hook, bead with the single clench knot, and then the double loop, and then about 1.5 to 2 foot up from there, same thing, hook with bead, stopper knot, double loop, and then here at this end we're going to cut it off and put our swivel. This is a total length of about 5 feet. Bear in mind I'm throwing it with a 12-foot surf rod, so I can get away with a 5-foot rig. If you're using a smaller rod, you probably want to shorten it up some. Now most people would probably finish this out with a clench knot. That's not the way I do it. I'm going to pass it through, make a loop, and I'm going to tie a double loop in the end of it. Because with a 50-pound test, a clench knot on something that small is kind of tricky. So I'm going to do it this way. Sorry, I meant to say a single loop knot, because you're at the end of the rig, you can get away with one loop. Anywhere in the middle, it has to be double. But here at your swivel and at your sinker, you can do a single. So you just make a loop like that, leave it. And don't even bother trimming the tag ends off, because I can't tell you, numerous times I have seen where somebody, cut the tag end off nice and pretty on their rig. Yep, well, that's where the sumbitch will pull apart at when you've got a big fish on there. So just leave the extra. You'll be glad you did. So anyway, that is how you hand tie rigs like this.